As a soft-Domme with a penchant for psychological sadism, the concept of non-physical punishments, that is non-impact or non-overtly physically painful punishments, is highly intriguing to me because these facets of punishments open up a wide variety of both creativity and effectiveness for you to use on any subtype, even the most bratty masochist. So if you want over 30 punishment ideas that don't involve a paddle or a whip, keep watching as I give you the ultimate guide to non-physical BDSM punishments. But before we jump into these delicious punishment ideas, I wanted to go over with you the purposes of punishment, the difference between punishment and punishment, and the traits of effective BDSM punishments. When it comes to the purpose of punishment, there are three main purposes for punishing a submissive in a BDSM dynamic. The first being to reinforce the boundary. You as the dominant have stated a boundary, have stated, here is my line, here's what I expect from you, here's the obedience, here's the respect, whatever, you set a boundary, and that boundary was violated through lack of mindfulness, through disobedience, whatnot. The second purpose of punishment is to honor the dynamic. And I say honor the dynamic because if you think about it, anytime that a dominant sets a boundary and says, this is the behavior that I wish from you, this is the obedience, this is the respect, this is the level of mindfulness I wish from you, my submissive. When that submissive does not adhere to that boundary, when that submissive is not mindful, when that submissive is disobedient, what that submissive is communicating to their dominant is, I value what I want over what you want, dominant, and that is a heart issue. That's an issue that you're gonna have to address as a dominant to your submissive if they are selfish enough to, in the moment of choice, go, I know what they want, but here's what I want. I'm gonna do what I want anyway. So that's why I'm saying it dishonors not only the dominant, but the dynamic. It dishonors the power structure in the dynamic. So punishment reinforces not only the boundary, but it honors the dynamic. And the third purpose of punishment is to train the submissive. Here's the thing about submissive training, dominance. It is up to you to lead them, guide them, and mold them into the image that pleases you, benefits them, and fosters this power exchange dynamic. When a submissive yields to you, when a submissive yields their will to you, yields their mind to you, yields their emotions, yields their lifestyle, yields choices in their everyday life, even out of a scene, out of playtime, when they're yielding to you, dominance, to mold their behavior and make them the best version of themselves possible, the key concept you need to remember is people do not change until their lack of change has cost them enough. So your goal, dominance, when administering a punishment is to make it cost your submissive enough where they do not wish to further engage with that behavior. Now quickly, let me break down the difference between punishment and punishment. This is something that I quickly touched on in my last YouTube short from my first live BDSM Q&A about a month ago. And we got talking about the difference between punishment and punishment. And this is a crucial concept to understand. So let me break it down very, very simply. A punishment is any form of pain or degradation that your submissive genuinely finds pleasurable. And punishments need to be given out as rewards, okay? A punishment is any form of pain or degradation that your submissive genuinely finds distasteful. So these are the things that they genuinely would not prefer. They do not want these things to happen. Okay, but it's not a violation of their consent. And we'll get to that, how a submissive can actually consent to something they don't prefer. So we're gonna break that down in a minute. But first, let's talk about the three main traits of effective punishment, because you can punish and it not be effective and it not connect physically, emotionally, mentally, and relationally. So effective punishments have three primary traits to them, and they all begin with the letter P. Proportionate. The punishment fits the severity of the crime. The second trait is personal. The punishment suits the submissive's limits and personality. And the third trait is painful. Pain is not just physical, so you must identify your submissive's genuine pain point and administer punishment in that realm. So, proportionate, personal, and painful. Those are what make up a healthy punishment. Now let's talk about effectiveness. How can you be the most effective with your punishment? Whether you are administering a typical impact play corporal style punishment, or if it's one of the over 30 options we will discuss today. Here is how you make your punishments the most effective. First, the submissive has consented to the punishment. Now, you might be thinking, well, how can they consent to something they don't want? How can they consent to something they don't like? And the answer to that lies in the definition of consent versus preference. Preference is defined as a greater liking for one alternative over another, whereas consent is defined as a completely mindful, willing, and uncoerced choice to say yes, and the ability to revoke that yes at any time without fear of repercussions. Therefore, if we contrast those two definitions of preference and consent, we can see very easily that the submissive can consent to something they don't prefer. They would prefer not to have this punishment, but it's not a hard limit. It's not a violation of their consent. Therefore, yes, a submissive can consent to things they don't necessarily prefer. That gray area does exist, and that's where you're punishing. You're punishing in a place they don't prefer, but not something that violates their consent. Secondly, the submissive understands their misbehavior. You will do so much harm in your dynamic if you start punishing your submissive and they're confused. They don't know what they did wrong, why you're upset, all of that. You're just angry. You grab and you start, doing your punishment, whatever you want to do. Very ineffective, and it will cause a lot of fear, a lot of loss of safety, a lot of loss of trust, and that's the exact opposite direction you want to go. So make sure the submissive understands the infraction, understands where they were disobedient, understands their misbehavior. And finally, a punishment is effective when the submissive wishes to adjust their behavior following the punishment. If you're still getting that same attitude, nothing has shifted, nothing has softened, nothing has humbled, it was not an effective punishment. And that's why I'm saying you have to make it personal and you have to make it painful. It will be the most painful when it's personal, when you know your submissive's true pain point. It may not be physical, it might be relational, it might be psychological, it might be regression. We'll talk about all of that in just a moment. So that's why you have to make sure that this is personal and painful so that it's effective, so that it costs them enough and they do now want to shift and improve their behavior. All right, so now that we know what a healthy punishment is and what it is used for within BDSM, I want to break down the 6 different realms of punishment, because yes, there are 6 different realms or categories for you dominants to punish within, and only one of those is overtly physical. So let's break them down. The first realm of punishment is psychological, and you have quite a few delicious options at your disposal here, dominants, especially if you are like me. You're more of a soft-Domme. You have a more psychological view of the energy exchange, of the dynamic, and you really love to see your submissive kind of break down and get a little anxious or a little fearful, whatever, and you like to see them squirmy and all of that. That is what you will love about psychological punishment, all right? So a few ideas for you here include scolding or lecturing. Some submissives are very sensitive to just verbal words, and their love language is words of affirmation, so you do the opposite, it'll wreck them. You can also use verbal degradation or public humiliation. Now again, like I said, this falls under your submissive's consent. So if your submissive does not consent to be humiliated publicly in front of your friends, at a party, whatever, don't go there, but that's a great option. 3, writing lines or essays surrounding their misbehavior. That's a classic technique. You can also remove privileges such as their TV, their phone, their computer, games, social media access, etc. Where's a privilege? Where's an activity that they enjoy? Remove that. It's a privilege. Remove that from them. And also using objectifying or non-human terms of address for them. So if you are typically very sweet in your address with your submissive, baby girl, little one, etc., and now you call them it, now you call them chattel, now you call them property, ooh, that can really get in their head. The next facet is relational because yes, sometimes your submissive has an infraction, was disobedient in a way that temporarily severs the intimacy in your dynamic. So in that case, absolutely, you can focus on the relational realm of punishment. And a few options for you here include ignoring or the silent treatment. Now, this is not ghosting. If you use this technique, it should be done with prior communication and a clear end in mind, okay? But ignoring or giving them the silent treatment temporarily can be very effective. Loss of playtime or scenes with you. Ooh, that might be a big pain point for them. Or just loss of time with you as their dominant. Even just quality time, intimate time with you as their dominant is very precious to submissives. And if you take that time away from them, that can be very, very painful. Now, sensory punishments are very delicious for me, not so much for you submissives, because we have so many creative opportunities at our disposal here. So a few amazing sensory punishment options for you include telling your submissive to chop onions. Oh my gosh, as someone who is so sensitive to chopping onions, it's painful. So yeah, have them chop a big bowl of onions. You can also make your submissive take a cold shower. Put them in an ice bath or even stick their hands in icy water. Also, wash their mouth out with soap if you need to. That's an old school one, very effective. You can also have them do menial or disgusting chores, like take out the trash or wash all of the dishes by hand and then turn on that garbage disposal. It smells all gross. You can have them even clean the litter boxes, scrub the toilets, scrub the outside of the toilet with a toothbrush. Any of those types of really menial, disgusting chores, great option. You can also have your submissive hold hot sauce or Tabasco sauce or a jalapeno or something like that, spicy, on their tongue. Whew, that could be very effective. And also having your submissive eat cold food. All their meals have to be cold for a certain amount of time, or bland food like just oatmeal, just plain oatmeal, or even cold bland oatmeal. Your submissive could also eat food that you know they dislike. Now we also have the sexual realm to punish within. And at first it might seem like there's really not a lot of area to punish within. There actually is, especially because quite a few people who engage within BDSM do so for the sexual elements. We bring our kinks into our sexual realm and it becomes a beautiful, delicious journey. So punishing in a sexual way for someone who is highly sexual within BDSM, can be very, very effective. And a couple ideas for you within the sexual realm include tease and denial. Build them up, deny them. Oh, that'll break them down. Chastity devices. Now we talk about this a lot in femdom specifically, but putting your submissive in a chastity device that they cannot receive any stimulation or pleasure can be very effective. No scene or playtime for an extended amount of time. Again, if they love the scenes, love the playtime, especially for a sexual release, then withholding that, denying that can be very effective. No sexual contact with their dominant. So this can be included in the last point, but if your scenes are not sexual in nature and you segregate the two, then withholding sexual contact in general will be effective. You can also implement orgasm control or orgasm torture, where you are completely denying orgasm or you are so overdoing it on the stimulation and orgasm that their body goes into a freaked out kind of numb, painful kind of state with the orgasm torture. Or finally, you can say no sexting. You can't even sext me. As my submissive, you cannot even sext me. No sexting, no erotica. You shouldn't be watching porn anyway, so I threw in erotica, no erotica, and no masturbation. All of that is off limits. Now we're going to jump back into the physical realm, and I know this video is titled The Ultimate Guide to Non-Physical BDSM Punishments, but as I said at the start, what I was referring to by non-physical was really non-impact or non-overtly physically painful. Now, all of these take place in the physical realm, so we can't get away from a physical element in punishment. But when I'm talking about the physical realm here, in terms of non-impact or non-overtly painful, we're talking about creating pain or discomfort through other means. And here's a really great creative list for you. So the first one, you can have your submissive hold a plank or a wall sit. That'll get their muscles burning and aching. You can have them march in place with damp or wet socks. And as someone who hates the feeling of a damp sock, I would be done in like 5 seconds. That's an easy punishment. You can have them kneel on grits, rice, or even sandpaper. So what is usually used as a very positive thing, a very beautiful position of kneeling and surrender, we now bring in a beautiful pain element to it there. You can also have your submissive hold a coin against the wall with their nose. Classic old school punishment there. Or forced early bedtime or an early morning routine. So if you're forcing them to go to bed and stop contact early, that can be painful. But if you're also forcing them to get up super early and get active at 5 o'clock in the morning, oh my goodness, that is truly pain, at least for me. You can have them do vigorous exercise like running, plyometrics, high-intensity interval training, etc. You can also have them hold stacks of coins against the wall with their fingers. So like 5 to 10 quarters or something per finger, and have them push against the wall with that. After a while, those fingers and the hands and the joints, oh, lots of discomfort there. And also some healthy restrictions can, believe it or not, be very painful. So if they have a big sweet tooth saying no candy, no sweets, no soda. If they love their coffee in the morning, oh, you can't have coffee today. You can't have coffee for the next week, whatnot. So healthy restrictions can be very, very painful as well. Our final realm to punish within is regression. And this realm is wonderful if you are a soft-Dom, mommy-Dom, daddy-Dom, caregiver, matched with a softer submissive, someone who's more sensitive, or an age player, someone who's into regression. So these are a few great options for you. The first one being timeout in a corner. If you have a little timeout stool, plop their little booty on the chair, throw them in the corner for a few minutes, a classic little punishment. You can also remove one or a couple of their favorite toys or stuffies. Ooh, talk about a little pain point. You take away their favorite stuffy for a day. Whew, my goodness. You can also ground them to their bedroom or ground them from leisure activities. So grounding them to their bedroom would be more for a short-term time frame. Grounding them from leisure activities, think COVID regulations, right? No movie theater, no restaurants, no leisure shopping, things like that. That can be done for a longer amount of time. But either way, implementing one of these regressive punishments can really sink your submissive in a really little space. I'm talking like in their mind, in their emotions, they just feel smaller and softer. And it can be a really great way to add to the intensity of the punishment without being overtly aggressive if you do have a softer style submissive. So if you would like a printable guide to 33 non-spanking punishments within BDSM, just go over to patreon.com/LXerotica and download this custom content today. So dominants, did you get some clever ideas? Submissives, you shake it in your boots a little bit? Either way, if you enjoyed this content, go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on those notifications so you'll never miss a video, and comment below with any questions you would like me to answer in an upcoming video.